The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to have a chat with Collin. So, Collin, if you can tell me when and where you were born, and if you can describe to me what it was like where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received. It's all yours, Collin.
Okay. Well, you actually want me to reveal my age? Oh,
Well,
man.
I mean, if you was a lady, I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, I was born the son of a poor sharecropper. I was born, grew up on a farm in Iowa. I was born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1957, and actually was adopted as an infant.
Oh,
And so I, never knew my birth family. I did find them later in life, though. So it's gotten pretty close to some of my birth family on my mother's side.
well, we'll come to
Yeah.
that eventually. So let's see what you can remember of your
Okay.
time
Well,
in sort of
yeah,
growing up in Nebraska.
Iowa is where I grew up in. It's right next.
Right.
Yeah, very very close to the state line. Is not very far from the house that I grew up in.
Did the
And
farm sort of go across the state line?
no,
Oh, not quite.
didn't cross over the state line. I drove over the state line a whole bunch, but
Is that just trying to get away from the Smokies?
yeah, and but
Bit like Dukes of Hazzard.
and when I first went to school in kindergarten up through the first few years of school, the school I went to was an old country school. It's 3 miles south of the farm that I grew up on, and it was old schoolhouse, and there was only like maybe 10, 15 people in my class. And then about sixth grade, that was put into a larger school district, so I started to have to ride the bus to go a lot further to school.
Big yellow bus, was it?
Yes, it was. And I was very different from everybody else in school because I was a cowboy.
Oh,
yeah.
So proper cowboy. So your farm then. Let's have a look at the farm. Was it arable? Was it all cattle and horses?
Corn and soybeans.
So where did the cowboy bit come in then?
Well, I had 3 dreams as a child: be a cowboy, be a pilot, be an actor.
Aha.
And I had in the town that our address was is Henderson, Iowa. It's just a really small town population. I don't know why I remember this number so distinctly when there's a lot of my childhood I don't remember, but the population when I was there was 306.
Good grief.
So yes, a very, very large metropolitan area.
Yeah.
And
a hamlet.
But every year in July, there was a gentleman, Art Fritcher. He was a rodeo stock contractor, provided stock for different rodeos around the area. And he lived there in Henderson, and he would put on a rodeo every year in July. And it was put on by the Volunteer Fire Department of Henderson, Iowa. So my father was involved, helped selling tickets, watching the gates. So he always took us out there with him. We was there every night, and I got to hang out and got to know Art Fritcher pretty good. And he was just this old cowboy guy who he rodeoed he's been around horses and livestock his whole life. He rodeoed for years and years and years. He took me with him to horse sales and had a really big influence on me at that time. And so he's the one who really got me interested in rodeo.
Uh-huh.
And
we'll come on to the rodeo. Let's get your schooling out of the way first. So, what was the first school you can remember?
Wales, Iowa. That's that little town of I said there was like 10, 15 people in our school, and that was incorporated into a larger school, Red Oak, Iowa.
Yeah.
In 6th grade, and I don't know how many people were there, and went I went there throughout up to the 10th grade, and I just didn't really like Red Oak. It was just, I don't know. I was so different from everybody there.
Yeah.
Red Oak isn't a huge town or anything, but it's was really different and just wasn't getting along due to my background. People just, they thought it was funny that I was a cowboy, and I don't know.
So
And then
was it the boots and hat that put them off?
I don't know what it was. It just, how people are
Wearing your
mean.
chaps to work or to
You know how
school.
people are mean back, in when they're teenagers.
Yeah,
And
kids
then,
can be pretty horrible.
yeah, and my parents bought a bar, actually, or a pub, in another town. It was in a different school district, and they had living quarters attached to it as well. So, and we stayed there a lot. So that I was able to move my school district into Carson, Iowa, Carson, Macedonia. I always remember my first day of school, and this is a smaller school. My graduating class was, I think, about 35 people. So it was a lot smaller than what Red Oak was. Went from 100 and some people down to 35 people. And my first day, I was walking in the school building. I'm trying to remember his name. But one of the seniors walked up to me. Just out of the blue, I had no idea. He introduced himself to me and says, "So you're the new kid." Says, "You going out for football?" I'm like, "Huh? What?" He's inviting me to go out for football? And says, "Yeah, sure." And so I went out for football. I was just
Were you the smallest guy then?
I was a scrawny kid. But I went out for football. In my junior year of high school, our football team was the only team in the state of Iowa to go undefeated, untied, and unscored upon for a whole season.
Wow.
Our defense did not let not one touchdown, not one field goal, nothing past us.
Wow.
And I'll never forget the last game.
What position were you playing then?
The bench.
Water boy.
Yeah. Well, I was a defensive end, but as scrawny as I was not built to be a defensive end, but yet that's what I was. And I got some playing time.
Yeah.
But the last game of that season in my junior year of high school, the last game, end of the fourth quarter, tied 0-0. And the opposing team won the flip, and they got to go first to do the tie. So they had, they were able to have 4 downs to try to get and we stopped them cold. And they got really close. It went down to them trying to kick a field goal, and we blocked it. And then when we had the ball, we scored 6 points. The last game ended 6-0.
Hey.
The next year, our coach, he'd tell us, this, we're playing this team. And says, and their coach just called me and says, "We know we can't beat you, but we just want to score against you." And
by which time, I guess by which time you've lost all your seniors.
So, we still had some really good guys. We didn't lose that many seniors, but we had some really a lot of the ones that were the defense that were really good that helped us in my junior year were in my class. But the first like 3 games, shutouts. Once again, nothing. And I was riding some bulls at that time as well at some amateur events. And I always like to say that this is how it happened. That at a rodeo somewhere in Nebraska, after I got off, bull stepped on me. I had some cracked ribs.
Ooh.
So I wasn't able to play at our next game. And so I was most certainly benched. And but their team, I can't remember what the score was. We were winning at that point. But their team got closer and closer and closer to the end zone. And everybody in their bleachers, small town bleachers, got out of the bleachers and all went down. They were standing right there at the goal line, just cheering their team to go in. And they'll go in. And they finally, we had somebody made a touchdown against us. And I thought, yeah, it's all my fault because I'm sitting here on the sideline with broke ribs.
Did you apologize to the rest of the team after the game?
I don't think they missed me. It's like I say, I was this scrawny kid. I was like 135 pounds dripping wet. So that's 140 maybe.
And the time you got all the kit on, a little bit heavier.
I'm a lot heavier now.
Yeah. So, rodeo then. You were doing rodeo in school.
Yeah, I started riding bulls and bareback broncs and saddle broncs when I was 15 years old.
So I can understand bareback, but bulls? Are you crazy?
Oh,
yeah. You have to be absolutely crazy and jumping.
You know why I got into riding bulls?
You were conned into it, surely.
No. Because chicks dig bull riders.
Even with broken ribs.
No, I just tried it, and my father was absolutely opposed to it. Absolutely opposed to it. Well, I actually had to sneak. My mother had to sneak me out of the house to take me to this junior rodeo when I was 15. And I had the first one. I didn't do saddle broncs, just did bareback broncs and bulls. And I had my bull in the afternoon performance, and the evening performance I had the bareback horse.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't do too well at first. But I remember going back home afterwards. My dad found out, and he always says, "Oh, you're just going to get her. Did you get hurt?" I says, "Nope."
I bounced.
he thought, that would be it. He thought, I get there and I get scared, and it's no. Yeah, it just made me more committed. And I went on in rodeo in professional rodeo. It's like the NFL of rodeo is the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. And to go into the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, you start out on it's called a permit. You have to win so much money on a permit within a given amount of time to earn your membership. To earn your membership as a card holder into the PRCA. And I got my permit filled. And a lot of the guys, I went to a lot of amateur rodeos before that. And for some reason, there was just some guys that just, they thought they were really big shots. And I always thought, I'm not going to hang around these amateur rodeos all my life. And a lot of them, that's all they did because, they could stay close to home, didn't have to travel, but you couldn't win as much money there. I always had my eyes set on the PRCA, and they just always, you can't do that. well, I did. I did.
Just talking of rodeos, when I was in Berlin, we got posted to Berlin from 1978 to 1980, and I joined the Berlin chapter of the European Rodeo Association.
Oh, okay.
Over in the American sector. I mean, there was a few guys over there, and they had this old bucket machine. We couldn't get horses and bulls into Berlin, so we used to have little competitions on this bucket machine. So I used to ride bareback on that. I tried ball once, and it wasn't for me.
That reminds me. Have you ever heard of the movie Urban Cowboy
Yep.
with John Travolta?
Yeah.
The bar, or the honky tonk as they called it,
Yeah.
that was in was Gillies, Mickey Gilly, and I actually got to be a friend of Mickey's later on in life, and but so after that movie came out, Urban Cowboy, that got to be just so popular. Oh, you got to go to Gillies down in Pasadena, Texas. But then during my rookie year in the PRCA, my first year as a full member, I was at the rodeo at the Houston Astrodome, and a bunch of us went down to Gillies just to hang out, and check it out and have fun. And there was a competition on this bucking machine when we were there. And we were watching it, and here's all these, these local guys, like they're big, really tough cowboys, and that they're slapping their face, getting all psyched out. And I'm standing over here watching them with some of the top bull riders in the entire world. Guys in the top 15 of the PRCA that go to the national finals rodeo. A couple of world's champions were standing there.
Yeah.
And all I could think of is, if these guys knew who was standing over here watching and laughing at them, I wonder if they'd feel so tough then.
Did you put a ringer on?
We just stood and watched. We didn't get on, so I think we missed. I think we missed the deadline for the entries, so we didn't get entered. We didn't get entered in that one.
So let's talk a bit more about rodeoing then.
Okay.
So you started off in the amateurs, and how often did you manage to get some practice before you sort of go and do a competition, or is it just turn up, hope for the best?
Well, a little of both. What I do sometimes is, I had a friend that had a rodeo school, and I'd shell out some money to go to one of his schools before I break out, just so I can get on a bunch of bulls. And since living in Iowa, there wasn't a place where anybody really had any practice pens. Now, if I would have lived in Texas a lot sooner, you can get practice bulls anywhere you go to down there. But when I was in Texas, there was somebody that had some practice. I'd go to them. I lived in Texas for a little while, but and a lot of it, though, was back in those days just showing up. Today, it's with professional bull riders now, it's a huge deal, but it's a lot more. But with me, where I went wrong in my rodeo career, I grew up in a house that was very negative, mentally and physically abusive. And so I had this attitude, I had a father who says, "What makes you think you can do that, you big dummy?" And things like that. And
it was so encouraging.
Yeah. One thing that I'll never forget, after I filled my permit and I became a full member, a card holder in the PRCA, I was going to my first big rodeo that only card holders can enter. No permits allowed at this one. And this is the day that, okay, I'm going to my first big rodeo. I'm a card holder now. And on my way to the airport, I stopped in and I saw my mother and told her what was going on. She goes, "I don't know why you're going there. Those people are professionals and you are not." Gee, thanks for the pep talk, Mom.
Did that just drive you on more?
It knocked the sails out of my wind. It knocked the wind out of my sails. Yeah, the sails out of my wind. Yeah. But yeah, so I fought my head a lot. And what I learned later in life, though, is I'm looking back at it, and one guy in particular that I remember, his name is Ted Noose. Ted and I were rookies in the PRCA the same year, 1980. Ted was Rookie Bull Rider of the Year in 1980. He went on, I can't remember what year it was, to become a world's champion. And I look at Ted in the people he traveled with. This is after my career as a bull rider, and the people he traveled with. He was traveling with world's champions, the top bull riders in the world. That's who he traveled with. So he surrounded himself with people who really had that positive attitude. And me, I just kind of loner by myself, didn't even think to jump in with. Even when one of my good friends was Lyle Sankey, one of the best bull riders. He rode all three, which is very rare in professional rodeo: bareback, saddle bronc, bull riding. He went to the national finals rodeo in all three events, and I traveled with him, from time to time. But never once did I think to say, "Hey, Lyle, you mind if I jump in with you and just go hard with you? Is that okay?" Because when I was around him, I'd ride.
Yeah.
And I rode good. And one thing I remember, I was at Lyle and Shorty Garden and I, Stan is his name, we call him Shorty, who is another national finals bull rider. I went to a handful of rodeos with him. We went from Omaha, Nebraska. I made a decent ride there, and Omaha was two-head rodeo, so we rode twice at Omaha. Went from Omaha to Waterloo, Iowa. And at Waterloo, Iowa, I had this bull that was National Finals Rodeo, Barnes Rodeo Company. And he just kicked over his head, went out there and just turned back really hard, kicked hard, and he just drilled me.
Ouch.
And there was a guy that he was one of the top bull riders in the world at the time. Went to the national finals almost every year. And I was walking back to the chutes, and I looked up at him, and he looks at me, and he says, I said, "Randy, what on earth happened?" He says, "You just ain't ready for them bulls that turn back right there." Like, gee, thanks. And so Lyle and Shorty and I, we left to go back to Omaha for our second go round there in Omaha. We stopped to get something to eat, and I was just all down in the dumps. And Lyle looks over at me and says, "Don't pay any attention to what Randy told you." Says, "Don't pay any attention to it. You ride good." And then the next day at Omaha, Lyle's younger brother, Ike Sankey, who was a friend of mine too, and he was one of the top bareback riders and saddle bronc riders in the world. Right out of high school, his first year out of high school, he qualified for the national finals rodeo in the bareback riding. And this guy was tough. But I was just really down, and I says, "Ike, do you think I can really ride bulls?" And he saw me one time on a bull called 7x7, national finals eliminator bull, that just threw everybody off, hard to ride, one of the toughest bulls to get by. And he looks at me and says, "I saw you go 7 seconds on 7x7 right here at Omaha one year, and anybody who could do that is dadgum sure a bull rider." I'm like, okay. But after
Good
that,
pep
we're in
talk
Dallas.
then.
Yeah, after that, down in Dallas, Texas. And I'm getting on this little bull that putting my rope on him, getting ready to get whoever pulled my rope looked at me, says, "You got him?" I goes, "Yeah." I says, "Well, this guy I told you about earlier, Randy," he says, "Randy had him a couple weeks ago and throwed him off." I was, "Oh, really?"
Did he now?
Did he now? And so that psyched me up. And I got my rope pulled, jumped up on my hand, and I nodded my head, and this bull went out there just back one way, the other way, and I spurred him the whole way. And I jumped off and I walked back to the chutes, and there stands Randy. He goes, "Randy, how you doing?"
Do you think he knew?
Oh, he just glared at me. He just glared at me.
You gotta love it.
Oh yeah, I did.
So what was the highest that you got to? Did you get to the Worlds and did you get up to
No.
Calgary? Get to the Stampede?
The biggest rodeo I worked at is Cheyenne Frontier Days. It's one of the biggest rodeos in the world. Cheyenne is Cheyenne Frontier Days, Cheyenne, Wyoming. And my last time at Cheyenne was 1989. If you've ever heard of the movie 8 Seconds, it's about a world's champion cowboy that dies in the arena. Lane Frost. Lane was a friend of mine. At Cheyenne, you ride 2 times. The top 15 from the first 2 go-rounds, we call them, go into the short go-round or some championship go-round on the final day of the rodeo. Lane and I had our 2 long go bulls the same days that year at Cheyenne, Tuesday and Thursday. I did not make the short round. Lane did. So I thought I was going to stop and watch, stay and watch. And I said, you know what? If I stay, I'm just going to be ticked off because I'm not in it. So went home, and it was that day in the short go round that Lane made a good ride. It was his get-offs that he just fell face down in the mud after he got off. This bull stepped on the shaps, kept him from getting up, came back around, put a horn in the middle of his back, broke a rib, and the rib punctured an artery. And died on the arena at Cheyenne. And I'll never forget the last thing on Thursday after our bull rides. We were all back behind the chutes, changing, putting our gear up, and just having fun talking. Last thing Lane ever said to me is he called me an old fart. and that was
because he was getting on by then.
Yeah, I was 30 something and he was 25 at the time, and that just that's a good memory for me.
Yeah.
But,
so what's your worst memory of being in the rodeos?
Oh, my worst memory of rodeo? I don't have a worst memory of rodeo.
What's your best memory?
All of it. All of it.
Did you manage to make a living out of it?
I scraped by. Like I said, it was just my attitude. There was times that, I'd be getting up when I'd go to ride, and I'd hear those, especially if I had, was getting low on funds and I really had to make some money. In my head, I got this to pay and this to pay. And I'd fight my head so much. And that's, like I say, is my worst memory is, okay, my biggest regret is not jumping in with somebody here's another example. Lane Frost. There was Lane, traveled with Tough Hedeman, another world's champion. Clint Bronger, one of the top bull riders in the world. Jim Sharp, another world's champion. These guys and Cody Lambert, another guy, top bull rider, top saddle bronc rider. They all traveled together and they fed off of each other.
Yeah.
And that's what it took. But it's really,
I guess that positivity all the time.
Absolutely.
That's got to rub off somehow.
Yeah. Like I say, well, I found when I was with somebody like that, I'd do well. But then when I wasn't, and that was my fault. I didn't know. When I was raised in that environment, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know that I could succeed. But there were times, I rode some of the bulls that buck off some of the best in the business. And yet I couldn't put two and two together. Says, you rode that bull, it bucked off this guy and this guy. So yeah, you are good. I just could not learn that in my head. It just, I don't know. But,
so what was the catalyst that encouraged you to retire?
Well, my last year as a competitor, the year before the year Lane died, I go from Burwell, Kansas, McCook, Nebraska, Cheyenne, Wyoming. So that was 1989 when Lane died. 1990, Burwell, Kansas, I tore my groin muscle in my left leg.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was making a really good ride, and right before the whistle blew, I just felt something pop. And I'm like, ah! And that took my concentration away, and down I went. I mean, the whistle blew. I think I was still in the air when the whistle blew.
So does that count or not?
If you have the tail of the rope in your hand and you haven't touched the bull or the ground,
The deck.
yes, then it's a score, but I didn't. And so I walked back to the chutes, and I just, holding on to my leg, I didn't know what was wrong at the time, but I could sure feel something. Then McCook, Nebraska, the next night, I got on with that torn groin muscle, and this bull just turned inside out on me, and he just went crazy, and I went down harder than I ever had in my entire career. And this bull was walking all over me, and all I could think is the next hoof is coming in the middle of my back, and they're going to carry me out of here in a hearse. I had to be carried out of the arena. I'm sitting back there, buddies, around me, and I says, man, that's it. That's the last one. I'm done. My nickname was Goose. Goose. You'll be back. Go home, heal up. You'll be back. Well, after that, I picked up the microphone and started to announce rodeos. And that's how I found my love of public speaking.
Aha.
So
that's how you moved on then. So how did you manage to pull that stunt? How did you get that job?
Announcing rodeos? I just started calling stock contractors. So, I want to announce rodeos. I want to announce, and I just kept calling. I says, well, you got a good voice. Why don't you come out here and I'll try you out on this one? And I just started to build and build and build. And did that for several years until it was just like the traveling. I just go. I was just getting worn out. And so then I started and I was getting pretty popular. I was having people offer me some pretty big money for the rodeos they were producing. And that's when I already had my private pilot license at that time. I got that in 1980 because I thought, it'd be a good way to travel to rodeos. But after I got my license, I didn't use it very much. Then after I stopped announcing, I figured, you know what, I'll just get the rest of my ratings and start flying. So I did that.
So let's just take you back to this announcing job, rodeos, because I guess you've done it for quite a long time. You've got the inside knowledge,
right?
So you were they using all the same sort of balls every time? Did they have like a sheet that when you're announcing, is going on what ball, what type of ball is going to come out to shoot at? So you've been able to give the audience that inside knowledge.
It's you're not, as an announcer, you work for whoever's going to contract you. you're freelance, like independent contractor, and whoever's the stock. A lot of times it's the stock contractor, the person who provides the stock, and sometimes it's the local committee. I know Oklahoma. After I announced their first rodeo, they always requested me as their announcer after that, and so it's whoever was providing the stock. I get to know their stock if I went to enough of their rodeos, or if it was stock that was really well known. And so, I just did my research, find out.
Yeah. So is it just like the bulls and the broncs that you did, or did you do the? Because there's a lot more to rodeos than just the bull riding and the bucking broncs. So there's the chasing the
calf roping, steer wrestling, team roping. I never did it. I never did any of that. No.
But did you announce on it?
Did at rodeos. You announce all the events. Yeah, and I judged. I did some when I was still riding bulls. During the times that I was injured, I'd get some jobs from the PRCA not announcing, but I mean judging rodeos. So I knew the rule book inside and out. So it's you hang around rodeos, even if you've never been a competitor. There's some of these announcers that are out there. They're very, very good. They've never competed, but they've just been around it. Yeah, they get to know it inside and out. In the PRCA, anybody who wants to announce rodeos in the PRCA has to go to a pro rodeo judging seminar. So that's part of their rules. But after rodeo, I got to do my next dream, be a pilot. I'm now a retired airline pilot. All
right. So you had your private pilot's license.
Yeah, and then in 1999, I went on. I got my instrument rating, my commercial rating, my certified flight instructor certificate, and started working as a flight instructor to build hours. Got my multi-engine rating, and then when I had enough time, I got my ATP, which is Airline Transport Pilot Certificate. And that's what you have to have to fly for an airline is an ATP. You have to have a minimum of 1,500 hours in the United States through the FAA. At that point, I started flying charter on citation jets. I was flying charter all over the United States. And I was grounded for a little while due to some medications that I went on in 2007. I was grounded for a few years. And
so what did you do in that time then when you were grounded? Were you able to carry on doing stuff to keep your sort of skill level up? I guess there's a certain amount of skill to being a professional airline pilot.
Well, at first I just, whoa is me. And I was on antidepressants. That's at the time the FAA did not allow antidepressants of any kind whatsoever. And my wife says out of boredom that what I'm about to tell you, she said I did it out of boredom. I put on a uniform, with the epaulets and I put a paper bag over my head with, eyes cut out and made a YouTube video that says, I am the Prozac pilot. And in 2011, I started a blog, Prozac Pilot, which now I'm starting to pick it back up. I haven't been using it much at all. But now I've brought it back up and I've got it going over to a new URL. It's FAA pilotsmentalhealth.org. And I'll get to this one down here, the stopsuicide.life, in a little bit.
Yeah.
But
I have a live show on a Thursday where we talk about mental health, everyday conversations regarding mental health. So we look at these subjects fairly in depth. So
okay,
I'll talk to you after.
Okay.
So
Cool.
let's roll on. Let's roll
Okay.
on.
Well, let's do. Well, I'll do 2 times with you. Yeah, I'm having fun with you. So where was I then? Yeah. So I did that, and in
So you started a
2000.
podcast.
Yeah, 2011, when the FAA announced that they're allowing 4 different antidepressants. All of a sudden, my phone is ringing. CNN, Inside Edition, all these other news outlets
Mm-hmm.
contacting me. And so I've been on CNN a couple of times, Inside Edition once, talking about pilots and mental health. And during the Germanwings incident, when that kid flew a Airbus into the side of a mountain, I got all kinds of calls on that too. And but I was able to to get back to the point where okay, I'm ready to fly again. And I got to, and then I was privileged to live out my second childhood dream of being an airline pilot. Oh yeah. You taxi out onto that runway, and the last plane I flew was the Embraer 175. Really nice airplane. Auto throttles.
Oh,
You gotta love auto throttles. Oh yeah. You taxi out, get cleared for takeoff, start to push the throttles about halfway up, then they just go up all by themselves in your hands. And
fly by buttons.
Oh, there's a lot more to it than that. But those jet engines just going down the runway, and then your FO's sitting over there. If it's my leg flying and not his, FO's sitting over there. 80 knots, checked. V1, rotate. Oh, here we go. And it was amazing. It was amazing.
So out of all the aircraft that you've flown, what was your favourite?
All of them. Now, I'd have to say the Embraer. It was a really, really nice airplane. It's the technology was really nice. It the only thing bad that I'd have to say about it is the weather radars on it wasn't. Well, I'm coming in out of, I can't remember where I was coming in out of, but I was going into Washington Dulles Airport, and controller says, called out to me, and he says, you've got moderate precept at this location. And I says, really? I'm not showing it. And he says, well, would you like some vectors around it? I says, yes, please. And just as he did that, we're just
You're into
it. We're getting rock and roll there. I'm like,
back on the ball.
Yeah, we were getting pretty hammered. Oh,
excellent.
Yeah, to speak of turbulence, I had a young first officer, leaving Oklahoma City going to Houston, Texas, and we're taxiing out, and we could hear some reports of turbulence. And this kid, he's probably young 20-something-year-old kid. He looks over at me and says, just so you know, your FO loves turbulence. I just thought that was so funny.
Oh, outrageous.
Yeah.
So bring us up to date then. Let's see what you're up to nowadays.
Okay, so dream number 1, be a cowboy. I did that. I got to compete with some of the legends in the sport of rodeo, and that was such an honor to be able to, I can, Lane Frost, Donnie Gay, 8-time world champion bull rider, Ted Noose, world champion bull rider, Charlie Sampson, first African American to ever win a world championship in professional rodeo. And the list goes on and on and on of legends in this sport that I got to compete with and travel with. And it just, I cannot think of a better time to be a part of rodeo than I did because of these legends that I got to know. And they're like family. They really are. I'll only back up to rodeo on you real quick before I get up to where I am today, just to give you an idea. 2 things I'll share with you about people that rodeo. Let's say there's 2 guys there. It's coming down. Let's take Cheyenne, Wyoming, for example. You got 2 riders left. If one of these makes a qualified ride, if they both make qualified rides, one of them is going to win it. And Cheyenne pays a bundle. And so let's say one of these guys, he goes out and he makes a really good ride. And the next guy out, if he has a higher score, is going to win the average, going to win the rodeo. He'll go back there and he'll help his buddy. That's just the way people are in rodeo. They're just that kind of camaraderie. But what I really learned about how people are in rodeo is in 2015. I had my oldest daughter die. I lost her to cancer on January 29th, 2015. But there was a gentleman, Bobby Brown, that he's a saddle bronc rider, one of the top saddle bronc riders in the world, older than I was. So he'd been around pro rodeo a lot longer when I came in. And this guy was tough. I mean, he's the epitome of the word cowboy. Tough, tough, tough. And you didn't mess with Bobby Brown. I was afraid of this man. I mean, he scared me. Tough, tough, tough. You'd hear about fights or see about fights with Bobby, and he was always on the winning end. And he scared me. But when my daughter was getting sicker, I started a GoFundMe page to try and raise money to get her into Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And I put a link on that onto my Facebook page. I didn't have that up on Facebook, but about 2 minutes, Bobby calls me. And he just, what's going on, man? And I told him what was going on, and we talked about it. And within seconds after us hanging up, Bobby made the first donation.
Wow.
And that's what rodeo people are like. I bawled my eyes out like a baby. And you're sort of going to talk about mental health later, but the same support when I lost my granddaughter last year to suicide, the same kind of support from, people in the rodeo community, people I hadn't seen for decades that reached out to me. And that's what they're all about. And okay, sorry. I digressed back to the past, coming back to the future, as you were saying. So cowboy, pilot, 2 dreams, actor. I'm a voice actor now. I have an agent also who's trying to work me over into films. So I'm living out my dream.
Time in booths, recording.
Yeah, in my workspace here. So yes, I have been. So although this website down there, stopsuicide.life, as you said, we're going to talk about mental health in another one of your programs, and I started that website. There's 2 websites: stopteensuicide.life and stopsuicide.life. Just it's kind of a tribute to my granddaughter, as well as one page is places people can go to get help.
Yeah.
Along with in the United States, there's now a dedicated line 988 for people in crisis. But now that's what I'm doing. In my podcast that I've started was after I lost my granddaughter, The Miracles of Tragedy. And like you say, on your mental health show, we can get in more into the miracles of tragedy and tell you a lot about it if you want to.
Absolutely.
Because it's brought on by the memory of my granddaughter. So,
well, Collin, I'd just like to thank you for sharing that with us. And what a terrific life. Yeehaw.
My Tim Allen impersonation.
Terrific. So, Collin, just thank you for being such a great guest.
Oh, I have so much enjoyed it. I really do. Really do. It's really did, I guess. It's a pleasure to talk to.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.